I'm a hustler, baby.
It's time for Hustle Her podcast. I'm your host, Deshae Keynes. Hustle Her is all about inspiring women through real life experiences that have helped to mold and develop not only me, but my guests into the entrepreneurs and leaders we are today. If you're an enterprising woman determined to succeed and looking for a bit of motivation, a bit of tough love, and some actionable takeaways to be the best you, girl, you are in the right place. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Mart. At Mart, you can buy, sell, or rent a bike with them. Make sure you head over to their Hamilton location on Church Street or their Paget location on Lovers Lane, or visit them on www.scootermart.bm. Hey guys, and welcome back to Hustle Her Podcast. As always, thank you for spending some time with me today. Big shout out to our season sponsors, 59 Front and Brown & Company. This episode's sponsor is Mart, as well as the Women's Resource Center. My guest today is someone that I reached out to after seeing some pretty interesting numbers online about domestic violence. So I reached out to the Center Against Abuse, and the lovely Laurie Shiell agreed to be on the podcast today. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you so much for having me, Deshae. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. So before we jump right in, I always jump in with some rapid fire questions just so people can kind of get to know you. And then we'll go into the meat of the conversation. Okay?
I'm up for it.
All right, let's go. I know it just passed, but who is your cut match team?
Somerset, of course.
Laurie,
Sister,
this is
I'm
what
a
I'm
winner.
This is what I love to hear. I love it. All right, what's your favorite time of the day?
Morning.
Oh, so you're a morning person?
I am a morning person.
Okay.
I get more done in the morning. By the afternoon, I'm depleted.
Got you. Okay. All right, what would you say is your biggest strength?
Listening. Perhaps providing feedback as well.
All right. I love that. Okay. And what's your favorite color?
It depends on the year. Each year I have a different favorite color.
Really? So what is it for 2024?
2024, it is like a Kelly green.
So what was it 2023?
Yellow.
Oh, okay. I love that you switch it up.
Yes.
I've never heard that before. Okay.
Yeah, so it's never the same color. I don't have one favorite color. Next year, maybe it will be a different color. It's just like something catches my eye. I'm like, oh, I love that.
I love that. Okay. What's your favorite thing to do with your husband? Like the best date night? What's the best thing you like to do?
The best thing I love to do with my husband is to travel. We both love to travel. And so planning the travel for us is even exciting.
Nice.
So this year we're planning for next year.
Okay.
And so we're hoping to do Ethiopia. We're hoping to do a European cruise. And those are the things we have planned. We usually do 3 big trips a year.
Nice.
So one more is we got to figure it out.
Yeah, there we go. I love it. Love a little travel time.
Yes.
Got to get off the island. That's
Definitely.
Good. You can.
We do minimum 2 weeks every time we go.
Love it.
Yes.
Okay. And you have amazing skin. So tell me
you.
about your skincare routine.
I just started using a Korean skincare.
Okay.
So I've been using it for the past 3 to 4 months. It's fermented ginseng. I can't pronounce the name. Hyderabad or something like that. My sister lives in California in Koreatown, and so was there. And she's right down the street from a Korean mall. And was in there and happened upon this product, and I really love it.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good to know.
Thank you.
Okay. So when I reached out to you, I had seen a article online that the police commissioner had posted about the numbers of domestic violence rising during the last hurricane that we had. I can't remember the name of the hurricane. Yeah, but it was the last one that we had last month. And how the domestic violence numbers increased in Bermuda. And it actually came from a friend of mine who sent me the article and was like, I had no idea that the domestic violence numbers in Bermuda were the way that they were. Yeah. And so I reached out to you and you were like, yeah, it's pretty staggering, you know? And I asked, would you like to come on and talk about it? And so we definitely want to get into that. But what I want to do first is for you to tell me a bit of an overview about the Center Against Abuse and its mission for Bermuda.
So Center Against Abuse, we are in our 45th year.
Wow.
We started back in 1979 under the name the Physical Abuse Center. And we currently provide services which include counseling. We do legal advocacy, which includes assisting people with protection orders, summary offense letters, going to court with them if they have a criminal matter to support them. We work very closely with the police, Department of Child and Family Services, as well as Aging and Disability.
Okay.
Them and us make up a group called the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Committee. We meet every other week to discuss high-risk domestic abuse cases in Bermuda.
Okay.
We also provide what we call community awareness and advocacy and training in the community on domestic abuse. We try to hit the 3 R's. We call it recognizing, responding, and referring. And so that's the basis of all of our training that we do in the community. And whether it's a church, whether it's a lunch and learn at a business, whether it's at a school with teachers, when it comes to children, we try to refer that to Coalition for Protection of Children. We assist people with safe housing and resettlement. That is becoming more difficult, I have to say, because of the prices in Bermuda and costs. But we're working through it. We work with him on that. And so we try to assist individuals who find themselves in abusive situations. So anyone over the age of 18, male or female, and below the age of 65, we assist. And we provide assistance to survivors of domestic abuse. Well, let me put it this way. We provide assistance to survivors of intimate partner abuse.
Okay.
Okay, so we're very specific,
Yes.
not just the entire brand of domestic abuse, but intimate partner abuse. And then we also assist those who have been sexually assaulted.
Okay. All right. So I guess before we go on just a little bit, how did you get involved in the Center Against Abuse and become the ED?
I tell people God placed me here.
Wow.
It goes back to childhood. So I grew up with my grandmother in my ear about abuse, believe it or not, because she was a child that was a victim of domestic abuse where her parents were in an abusive relationship. Her father was abusive to her mother, and she would tell me and my sister this story about how she was raised in an abusive home and how she didn't want us to repeat the cycle. And she would say, it runs in your blood.
Wow.
And now we're learning how trauma now comes through the bloodline. This is a lady that had a primary school degree, okay? But she understood back then that abuse trauma is handed down through the blood. And so she would say, I'm telling you this not to shame my dad, but so you won't repeat the cycle.
Wow.
And so that was her job, not to repeat the cycle in her family, to cut it off.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of crazy. So then you transitioned.
So then
into
I
this work?
transitioned into this by chance, to be honest with you. A friend of mine, Deanna Durham, she was on the board at the Physical Abuse Center, and she was like, oh, we need somebody. I'm moving on, Laurie, and I would like for you to replace me. And she reminds me, she said, I chased you for about a year. And so I eventually came on. At that time, I was in HR, and they needed someone with HR experience. And so came on board, was on board for about a year. And then my HR job was being made redundant. The executive director at the Physical Abuse Center at the time, she was going on a sabbatical for her full-time job because she was part-time. They asked me to come on for a year. Here I am 15 years later.
Wow. That's what they say. You look back and 15 years have just flown by.
Have flown by. I was supposed to be here for 1 year.
1 year. And look
1
at
year.
you. 14 years later, still here.
Yes.
And making an amazing impact on our
Thank you.
community.
Thank
So
you.
when we think of domestic violence or intimate partner abuse in the sense of what we're here to cover today, how does it present itself in the Bermudian context? Like what are we seeing the most here?
We see everything from physical abuse to verbal abuse, the emotional abuse of it all, socially people being abused, religious abuse we see as well, find a lot of financial abuse.
Okay.
And that shows up in a lot of different ways. Well, and some people see it when they remove themselves from the person. So withholding child support, using the courts as a means to financially deplete you through your, having to pay for a lawyer and things like that. And then the newest one, technological abuse. We see a lot of tech abuse now where people are now using your phone to send you harassing emails, sending you harassing voice notes, threaten you, as well as demanding your passwords, throwing your phones up against the wall, breaking, computers, phones, all of that, and even then themselves putting information that's untrue about you on social media.
Wow. And we're seeing a lot of that in the tech space.
Yes.
Wow. And then with, things like WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
And then you also have like, certain social medias like Snapchat where you can see it and then it's gone.
And then it disappears. And so a lot of my clients now, as soon as something comes through,
screenshot.
They screenshot it immediately before it disappears.
So one of the things that stood out the most to me were the statistics and the prevalence of domestic violence in Bermuda, right? And some of the statistics show a significant number of women and men in Bermuda experiencing abuse, right? Can you share some of those alarming statistics that most people don't know about here?
Yeah. So one of the most alarming statistics is that the major call-outs for police is domestic abuse.
Wow.
So the most call-outs they have is for domestic abuse. Prior to gang violence, the murder rate was due to domestic abuse.
Wow.
And it continues today. It didn't stop because of gang violence, but it just is now overshadowed by that. The Bermuda Police Service started because of a domestic abuse murder. So domestic abuse didn't just start here recently. It's been around and we are still tackling it, unfortunately. We saw our numbers go up to 170 during the pandemic. Prior to that, we were around 120, 130 a year. And
this is when you say 120, 130, you're saying clients. Okay.
Clients coming into our office, right? And that's not services, because services go into, 700s and all of that, right? So clients coming into our offices annually. So, and today we are at 123 clients. Today. And 4 of those are men. And so we are now seeing another increase. What we have seen an increase in since the pandemic is year on, we have seen an increase in our numbers for counseling. So last year, I hired an extra counselor. So our counselors are on call. And last year I hired an extra counselor. And this year we surpassed our numbers from last year by May.
Wow.
This year. So our counseling piece has grown tremendously. And we find that people are now calling and asking for counseling.
And this is specific.
Yes, which was something that wasn't happening before we were, especially in the Black community. We find that people kind of shy away from counseling. But we are finding more and more people of color calling and saying, I need some counseling. I need some help.
And why do you think that is? What do you think the narrative has changed a bit when it comes to counseling, especially in the Black community?
I would say people that have completed counseling are now telling their friends, look what it did for me. I encourage you to do it. You've been in this too long. You can't get yourself out. You need some help.
Yeah.
So that has definitely assisted.
So when I was going through the website, I read, and I want to read this specifically, that over 7,000 women have experienced domestic abuse in their lifetime, which is about 27% of our population, female population here in Bermuda. What are some of the, factors that contribute to the prevalence of this abuse in women specifically? Yeah.
And I would say specifically, even in Bermuda, we have such a tiny island. And a lot of it that contributes to women staying is that they don't want everybody to know their business. Okay, speaking specifically about women, right? They don't want others to know their business. They don't want it to appear as if they failed. I failed in my marriage. I failed in my relationship. I failed as they feel as a failure as a parent, especially when there are children. Another contributing factor is this is how I was raised and it's normal.
Wow. That generational thing we spoke about.
The generational cycle, right? And then there is, I love my partner.
Despite the abuse.
Despite the abuse, because they're not bad all the time. I want you to understand that they're not bad all the time.
Yeah.
They have bad moments.
Yeah.
And so I put those bad moments behind me and I look at the good. And when you are in an abusive relationship, studies show that there is a chemical reaction to the abuse because there's a chemical reaction to the makeup. And so you crave the makeup, right? And so the brain quickly forgets the abuse and craves the makeup.
Wow. Because once you get past the abuse, the makeup is so nice.
That
right?
oxytocin that pulls you
dopamine,
in, that dopamine, all of that is raging in your body. And so that is what's at the forefront for you.
And even when you're being abused, regardless of the type of abuse that it is, you're just focused on when it gets better again.
Exactly. When it gets better again. And, the conversations that we have with our clients is, you are actually addicted to this person.
Wow. It's an addiction.
It is an addiction.
Wow. It's crazy how our brain works, right? And how we process things. And like you would think, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, and we'll get to it in a little while, is you would think when someone is being abused, your natural reaction is to leave.
Yes.
But because it doesn't happen all the time, like what you're speaking about, and your brain is making you think, oh, this is not that bad. You stay in the situation.
You stay in the situation. And because a lot of times when you're in that situation with that person, you're seeking to help them, not yourself. They need the help.
And women traditionally.
Are fixers like that, right? We want to help that person. And the conversation that I have with clients is that if you're not a professional, you can't assist this person. You can give them a place to go. They have to help themselves. Yeah. You can only help yourself. You cannot help someone else other than giving them the information so that they can go when they are ready.
So you mentioned earlier that you've had some men come in with domestic violence. I think it was 4 for this year. What would you say are some of the differences in the trends you've observed between men and women facing domestic violence?
Believe it or not, men stay in it longer because a male ego will not admit to being a victim. Will never admit to being a victim because they can handle that person. Whether that partner is male or female, they can handle that person because it's the male ego that's speaking to them, right? Yeah. And so they tend to stay in it longer.
Wow. So when we think men in domestic violence, like most people, I guess when it comes to domestic violence and intimate partner abuse, we tend to automatically assume physical, right? Are we seeing physical when it comes to men, or is it more emotional, verbal, or in certain situations, is it all of the above?
It's all of the above,
Got
right?
it.
They experience the exact same thing a female will go through. But like I said, they tend to stay in it longer. In particular, especially if it's in a same-sex relationship, it's hidden more.
Got you.
It does appear to us that it's hidden more. And while the person may be publicly homosexual, same sex, that part is still kind of a taboo for a homosexual relationship to have that, right? And so we find that people feel that they may be judged, and so that's another reason why they hide it. They don't know how they're going to be perceived or received. It's like, oh, well, what do you expect? Especially if they go to a church, you're sinning.
It's sinning, so that's a part of the sin.
And so that's a part of the sin. And if they were raised in church, they may feel that guilt of it as well. So it's a lot of factors with the same sex. But Center Against Abuse is here for you. We're a judgment-free zone. Like I said, we assist anyone who is a victim of intimate partner abuse.
So we touched on it briefly around why it's difficult for victims to leave their abusers. And you said it's definitely a chemical reaction. Are there other things that we can essentially kind of educate people on the reasons why people don't leave? Because I said it earlier, like the minute I hear that someone or anyone hears that someone's being abused, it's like, well, why would they stay in that? So outside of what we kind of spoke about already, what are some of the additional factors in why people stay in these abusive relationships?
They stay for the children. They stay because they think it's going to get better. Because remember, I fell in love with this individual. And so that's the person I'm staying for. I'm not staying for the abuser. I'm staying for the person I fell in love with. Finances. I can't make it on my own out here. You know how expensive it is?
Very expensive in Bermuda.
It's very expensive, you know? And not only is it expensive to make it on your own, to move is expensive, right?
Yeah.
And so those costs are astronomical.
Yeah.
I also stay because I am being told constantly that nobody else is going to want me. I'm being constantly belittled. And so leaving is not even in my mind because I'm dealing with the here and now. I'm just fighting fires constantly. I'm trying to keep the peace constantly. And so leaving, I can't think about that because I'm just trying to keep peace in my house.
Every day is trying to stay alive.
Every day is trying to stay alive.
And if there's children factored into that, you're taking care of the kids.
I'm taking care of the kids. I'm trying to keep the peace. I'm just trying to keep the eggshells on the perimeter.
Because you're preparing for the next time that
I'm
goes up again.
preparing for the next time because I know it's going to happen, but I'm just trying to keep those eggshells on the perimeter.
Yeah. So when we were talking initially, we were speaking about sexual abuse or intimate partner abuse.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people think if you're in a relationship, it technically isn't abuse, but we're speaking about no means no, even in a relationship.
Even in a relationship, no means no.
Yeah. How often are we seeing those types of things happening with intimate partner abuse?
In majority of intimate partner abuse, there is sexual abuse.
Wow.
Because your partner has a lack of respect for you, has a lack of respect for your views and even your voice, in particular your voice. And so you're no means nothing because to them, they own you. You are theirs. And so you're no means nothing. In Bermuda, we even have on our books, we have spousal sexual abuse as an act of a crime. You know, that people can actually take their spouse for sexually assaulting them to the courts.
Yeah. And I mean, it's in the definition of it, you understand that is the case and that is abuse. And if I say no, it means no. Correct. But you don't, I'm assuming in the moment or when you think about it that way, it's like, how can your partner, someone that you've already been intimate with in that way, abuse you like that? So I guess, I don't know. It just, I understand it.
Right.
It makes complete sense when you explain it.
Yes.
But then when you think about it on a deeper level, and I guess that's where the mental part of it comes into. It's like, I've already been intimate with this person, but then they're violating me in that way. That's got to be
And you don't initially see it as that, right? It's just like, here this goes again, you know, not listening to me and forcing themselves upon me.
Wow.
And you see it as that. And okay, let me just do this and get it over with. But then once they're sitting in my office and I have this conversation and say, you know, has there ever been any sexual abuse? And initially it's like, well, no. And then I continue with the conversation. Have you ever performed sexual acts that you didn't want to, that you said no to, that you were forced to do? Well, yes, you know, that's just a part of marriage. Do you know, if I explain this to you, what sexual assault is, it's lack of consent. If you did not consent, that's sexual assault. And it's like, if the same thing happened with a stranger, what would you call it?
Abuse, assault.
Sexual assault.
Wow.
And that's the aha moment.
Wow. Because I'm telling you, you don't think about that.
You don't.
Like,
because this is the person I love.
Yeah. And if you have children with them, you've clearly already been intimate with them.
Yeah, and I've been intimate with them.
Wow. So do you think that there's adequate legal protection in Bermuda for domestic violence victims?
No.
What could we do better?
We could definitely tighten up all our laws, you know, in particular around domestic abuse, because we don't have an overarching domestic abuse act. We only have a domestic abuse protection orders act that only speaks to protection orders, right? And so if we had an overarching act which spoke to domestic abuse in Bermuda, whether it's with intimate partners, whether it's someone else in your household, whether it's with a senior, we would have an understanding of what it looks like, what it is, what's not going to be tolerated, right? And so we need to hold abusers more accountable in Bermuda. What I find is with the Protection Orders Act, if someone breaches, I've seen people breach 10 times. And they're bailed, and they're bailed, and they're bailed, and they're bailed, and they're bailed.
Wow.
What do you think that does to the victim?
Yeah, What's the point of
what's the point of
reporting it?
me reporting it? I'm reporting it. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
And the person gets arrested. The person goes before the courts. The person gets bailed.
Wow.
And it may seem like, oh, well, they're just stalking you. Oh, they just called you. But do you know what that's doing to me internally, to my mental health? And especially if I'm the primary parent, how am I now parenting in fear? How is that being now translated to my children?
Yeah.
And so these are the things that need to be looked at when someone continually gets bailed, because it's also reinforcing with the perpetrator what it is. No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal.
I'll just go to court, get bailed out,
I'm going to get bailed.
and it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. And I'll be off to do whatever I wish to do again.
So if someone does violate that protection order act, well, I guess order, right? And they get bailed, what happens? Do we have a rate of people going to prison or jail for abuse?
Very low. Even if there is a criminal area that they go through rather than the civil, which is the protection orders. It sometimes takes a year, 2 years, 3 years for the matter to actually finally be heard in the court. And some people feel as if the matter is taking so long so that you would just go away.
Yeah.
They feel like their matters aren't important to the courts. And, it's because it's personal. This is personal to me. And so I'm feeling offended by the courts because I keep getting put on the back burner. Oh, well, we have a murder trial and your lawyer has to be in that. So that's more important than your matter. So these are things that victims are constantly hearing when it comes to criminal matters for domestic abuse. And it has an impact that I don't matter to even the courts. They don't see this as important.
Yeah. So what does the Center Against Abuse do in those instances in terms of support for people who are they've done what they're supposed to do, and it's not coming up in the system, in a way that we would like to see in terms of expediency? How do you support them?
So once we hear something, I may call the police. I may even work with the DPP and say, listen, this person was released, or we try to head it off prior to, especially when we know it's a high-risk individual. It means that we're going to call the police and say, have a talk with the DPP and say, objections to bail. Objections to bail because of A, B, C, and D. And those are with criminal matters, right? And so we have been good in that area where objections to bail have been upheld by the courts. Or if they haven't, we've kind of put something in place. Okay, we're going to ask the police to do drive-bys by your house. And we discussed with them a serious safety plan put in place. They may not even be staying here. They may be staying somewhere else that is safe. But we have to work as a team with the police and even Department of Child and Family Services, if there are children involved, to ensure that everybody is kept safe.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that most of your clients, or your clients that you have remit over, are between the ages of 18 and 65,
That's
right?
correct.
But pre-show, we were speaking about how a lot of times in these intimate partner abuse situations, the children are witnessing to this. What happens in those situations?
In those situations, especially if I'm hearing your full story, I will ask you, is Department of Child and Family Services involved in your life? Do you have a caseworker? Because we want to get the children some assistance. If it isn't, I might say to you, have a conversation with, even if you are involved with Child and Family Services, I will say, have a conversation with your school counselor. There's someone that are going to see your children on a regular. Get them to understand what your children have seen, what they have witnessed, so that they can bring them in and they have that someone that they see 5 days a week from 9 to 3:30 that can assist your child through transitions. Even speak with the teacher, right? Because if your child's acting up in class, the teacher needs to understand, my child's not acting up because my child's being rude. My child's tired because we were up late last night because I had a domestic. My child woke to me crying or woke to me screaming, right? And so once a teacher understands that, they're going to understand, oh, I see you acting up. I'm going to need to hug you, or let me just have you spend some time with the school counselor today, because those are the children we need to love rather than discipline.
Absolutely. So you mentioned when we were talking pre-show as well around some of the new findings that you've been made aware of about children who are experiencing domestic abuse as opposed to actually witnessing it as opposed to being abused. Tell me a bit more about that.
So studies show that children who experience domestic abuse have mental health issues higher than children who are being abused directly themselves.
Wow. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so if we don't get a grip on that, it then continues the cycle, right? And so that's why it's important that your child, if they are in an abusive situation, that they receive some type of assistance, that they understand what love is, because right now love is looking a lot crazy to me, and I'm feeling it crazy because here are my parents in front of me having issues. Who do I go with? How do I protect this person? I don't want to see my other parent go to jail. I don't want to see the police. It's a lot on a child's mind, right? And they're going to school with it. They don't know how to process it.
Yeah. And then when we talk about cycles and generational, cycles, these things, even if they're witnessing it, but they can potentially be in environments where they are either being abused or being the abuser as they become adults.
Oh, yes, most definitely. You heard me speak earlier how my grandmother was in a household where her parents were abusive. Now, she made a conscious decision that no more for her and her family. She had a brother. She had two brothers. And both of them were alcoholics. One was an alcoholic and an abuser, just like their father.
Yeah.
And him and his girlfriend fought like cats and dogs. This is how my granny tells the story. And he must have went at the girlfriend one day and she said, I've had enough. She stabbed him 119 times. She was the last female to be hung in Bermuda. This is what happened when the cycle is not broken.
And this is why it's so important that people are going to counseling, right?
This is why it's so important that people get counseling. And what studies have also shown is when those children are being loved upon by family members, those that they trust, this can also change their brain waves, can change the chemical makeup in their brain to remove the abuse and the turmoil that they're feeling in their lives and give them some hope for a healthy future.
So what can people do who are witnessing or know of abuse that's going on in relationships with children, and the person who is being abused has left, but they've gone back? How can they support that family or that person in their journey through this, through domestic abuse, especially the intimate partner abuse, which is what we're specifically talking about? How can they be supportive of them as opposed to, well, they won't leave, so I'm done helping?
Right.
How can we be more supportive?
And it's hard. Let me be honest. It's very hard to support a victim who continually goes back, right? But we have to. Yeah. We have to be in there for the long run, because isolation is the perpetrator's biggest tool. Isolating you from friends and family. That's when I have total power. Yeah. Right? And so friends and family need to stay in the life. Friends and family need to stay in that person's ear and have those conversations with the importance of raising the children in healthy spaces, being in a healthy space yourself so that you can be healthy for your children. Yeah. Because a lot of times when you're not in a healthy space, somebody else is watching and will take advantage of your children. And so getting that point across, that making your children number one in your life, encouraging them to seek help, going with them to seek help if you need to. Just intervention, you know, it soon becomes reality for them. It soon becomes reality. Every time you intervene, there's a seed being planted in that person. And so don't stop. As hard as it is, as irritated as you may get, don't take it personal that you're not offended that they didn't listen to you. They have listened. It's just really hard right now. And ask them, how can I help? Yeah. How can I help you? Because it may be something as simple as, listen, I need a place to stay. I I had to go back because the
No
place I was
place,
at
yeah.
was only temporary. I didn't have a permanent place to stay. You know, maybe it means a couple of family members getting together, paying $100 each a month to assist with rent for a time until that person gets on their feet. You know, so there's a lot of things, but ask the person, how can I help? Also, we also focus a lot on the victim. We also need to focus on the perpetrator. If that perpetrator is your friend, you need to be having conversations with them in the same way. That's not on. I understand. I see what you're doing, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to assist the victim with getting some help, with calling the police, with supporting them, with supporting your children. No, I'm sorry, you can't be a part of this group anymore because we don't accept that type of behavior. You need some help, mate.
good call
You
out.
need some help.
Yeah.
Ace girl.
Yeah, it's a good call out because in a community as small as Bermuda as well, more than likely, not all the time, but more than likely, if you know the victim, you know the abuser.
You know the abuser. The abuser's not walking around here friendless. You know?
It's the truth.
It's the truth. So, you know, people need to step up to the abuser, whether it's siblings, friends, parents, cousins, whomever, and have a serious talk. Listen, if you don't toe the line how you're supposed to, some things are going to happen to you. You can end up in casemates. I'm sorry, I'm dating myself.
It's okay.
Westgate.
Yes.
The other gate. and or, you know, we find this behavior unacceptable. You can't be on this like this.
Especially because if there's no consequences for your actions.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's one thing if the legal system, but then if life goes on as normal, if your friends are still your friends, if your family is still treating you the exact same, what is the need to change?
What is the need to change? No, you need to get some help. We need to assist you in putting you in a program because this is clearly something that you don't have a handle on and that you're not interested, but we need to assist you with getting interested.
You're absolutely, honestly, I'm so grateful that you said that because even when I was doing the research for this and I was looking up the different things about abuse, very rarely do we talk about the help that the abuser needs in order to stop, you know, doing the things that they're doing to the victims. We want the victims to get counseling, want them to get all the support that they need. But if they're trying to get all whole and healed and their abuser isn't, what is the point?
Right, because I've left the person and guess what? They're still abusing me. They're still harassing me. They're still stalking me. The behaviors are still there. And that's the sad part is that sometimes when you leave, the behaviors do not stop. You just have to set up these tighter boundaries and tighter boundaries. So there's a hole there. Let me set that up. And, you know, sometimes it means I need to change my number. I need to change my routines.
And in Bermuda, it's got to be so difficult because you could run into them at any point. You can
run into them at any point, right? And so when I run into you, and I tell my clients, I don't care how scared you are, show no fear. Because you actually have the upper hand and you have to remember that.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. I'm so blown away because you don't think of all of these things, right? And in a community such as small as Bermuda, once again, I had no idea the numbers were the way that they were. And then knowing all these additional details, it's like really eye opening that this is what a lot of people, 7,000 women in Bermuda are dealing with. So when we think of abuse, like abuse doesn't always just start out as abusive, right? Like someone doesn't just come right out and they are immediately physically abusive to you. Like what are some of the things for someone who's never been in an abusive relationship before that they should be looking out for when in a relationship with an abuser that they don't know is an abuser just yet?
So it usually starts with controlling behaviors that appear to be really nice. And so it's those telephone calls all the time. Oh, how's your day going? What you do today? Simple, right? But
Seems so.
Checking in with you, asking you to call when you get work or when you get home. But when you don't do those things and it's now an argument and the person is angry with you, that's control. That's abuse. That's how you know it's not genuine. And after a while, that person stops calling because they now have you in a cycle of calling and making contact all the time.
Something as simple as a phone call.
Something as simple as a phone call. Start you on a journey where you're now on eggshells if you've missed a phone call because you know what that means. Oh, I've just started the argument. You see how it starts? Not they're starting the argument. You now are blaming yourself for starting the argument because you didn't answer that phone. You could be at work.
You didn't do anything.
anything. The person's trying to monopolize your time. They know you're out with your friends, your work colleagues. They're calling you. They're blowing up your phone, texting you. That's a sign that that person is trying to even control your time when you're not with them, so that they are always on your mind. And even if you say, listen, you know, as I said, I'm out with my friends. I'll talk to you later. Oh, so your friends are more important than me? The guilt trips. Yeah. And so those little things that seem like nothing are actually warning signs that this person is controlling, because they're not outright abusive immediately.
No.
It might be that you've had male friends or female friends for some time, and, oh, I don't like those people. I don't like that person. And they're trying to now isolate you from your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Telling you what to wear. I remember one lady saying that she went out on a date with some guy, and he came to her job with an outfit for her to wear. This man did not know me, she said, and bought an outfit for me to wear on my first date. She said, it felt weird. She said, but the ladies at her job were like, oh, it's a good catch. Wow, look what he did for you. No one at her job said, no, honey, that's
not after a first date.
Not a good first date. He's trying to even control what you wear. That's a sign.
And that was early on after she had become a client.
This was a person that wasn't a client.
Okay, got it.
This was just a friend telling a story. And she was saying that happened. And she was like, she felt like it was weird. She ended up not wearing it. And luckily it was just a casual date. And she's like, she went off to school. And years later, here comes somebody saying, oh, do you know so-and-so? And she's like, yeah, kind of. And it's like, yeah, you know, they were abusive to their wife. And she was like, there
you go.
That's that feeling that I felt, because he was being controlling.
On a first date.
On a first date. But it came across as
super sweet.
Super sweet.
Nice. Oh, he's thinking of me.
Yes, he's thinking of me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I tell clients is, if it doesn't feel right, follow that first feeling. Follow your gut, follow your intuition, follow your Holy Spirit. Whatever is telling you this ain't right, don't silence it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as we kind of wrap up here, because I told you time goes by so quickly, right? What is it that you want for anyone listening today who may be experiencing domestic violence, or, like now I know, intimate partner abuse, to know what help should they take, what steps should they take to get help, if it doesn't mean immediately coming to the Center Against Abuse? Like, what would you want them to know after listening to this conversation? I
want you to know that there's help available, number one, and get help in your fear. Don't wait for some epiphany to come over you, because you're always going to be fearful. Get help in your fear. Let us assist you through that fear onto a space where you know yourself, you understand yourself, and you become strong, and you understand your strength, and it will come. It will come. You won't always be fearful. You actually have the upper hand. Let us assist you with showing you how you have the upper hand. Bring your family with you, bring your friends with you for support. And even those that are family members and friends, and they're on the periphery and saying, I've been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and it's been stressful on me. You give us a call too, so that we can strengthen you to assist you with strengthening your loved one.
And then what would you say to people about breaking the silence? Because obviously we live in a very small community, around people we mentioned earlier, around people being very ashamed to come forward. What would you tell people around that silence and that shame?
The shame is not yours to wear. The shame is not yours to have. You've done nothing wrong. You're trying to assist that person, to help that person, to even at times fix that person. The shame's not yours. You'll be surprised by the outpouring of support that you get once you speak up and you speak out.
I love that. And Laurie, I know this is not a traditional Hustle Heart episode, but one of the things that I always want to know from my guests is something that they want to be remembered for. And after 15 years in this space, dealing with, abuse on all levels, what is
Right.
something that when someone mentions you and the work that you did in this space, what is something that you want to be remembered for having done this work for so long?
I want to be remembered for being gentle, for being kind, for being open, for having a listening ear, for understanding. I want to be remembered as someone that helped another person.
Love that. And then finally, if anyone listening today is experiencing abuse, knows someone that is experiencing abuse, where can they go and how can they make contact to get the help that they need?
So if you need help right now, 24-hour basis, we do have a hotline. Our hotline number is 297-8278. You can also call our office during Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at 292-4366. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We have a website, as you mentioned earlier. You can get us through any of those channels. You can send an email to info@centeragainst abuse.bm, and center is the English way, CNTRE. We are here to assist you. You don't need to give us your name right away. We've had calls from friends, we've had calls from loved ones, we've had calls from workplaces. We're here to assist you in every way in maintaining your physical and mental safety and health.
Amazing. Thank you, Laurie, so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you. I feel much more informed than I was before, and I'm hoping that everyone who watches Hustle Heart Podcast feels the exact same way.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Yes, thank you. All right. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. We just had an amazing episode with the executive director for the Center Against Abuse, Miss Laurie Shiell, who came and shared some amazing statistics with us and some background around domestic violence here in Bermuda, as well as intimate partner abuse and what that toll has on all of the victims, as well as the abusers, and as well as the additional family members in those situations. If you or anyone you know are experiencing domestic violence or need the help that you believe that they require or you require, please reach out to the Center Against Abuse here in Bermuda. Thank you for watching Hustle Her Podcast.